Before we go any further into Google Classroom, it's probably worth just looking at Google Drive and how this works. Now, it should be said that you can use Google Classroom without any need for Google Drive. However, if you can kind of get used to how Google Drive works, and particularly if you can start using it regularly, it has an awful lot of advantages over kind of using Office, like Word and PowerPoint presentations, and putting them into Classroom. There's a lot of advantage of using the Google Drive versions of the same sort of programs. Now, it's dead easy to use actually. So all the controls that you'll need to begin with are over in this new button. So in here you can start organizing things with folders. So you might, for instance, want to make one for Key Stage 4 resources or whatever it might be that suits your needs. And that's the same as it would be if you're organizing in kind of like a traditional Windows kind of environment. What we've also got are different document types we can make. So here, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides are all the same, more or less, really, as Microsoft Word, Excel and PowerPoint. There are some features that are not in there, but they are sort of few and far between, really. Actually, it does 99% of the stuff you want to do with those, it can do, and actually in some cases it does more. Anyway, what you'll probably want to do first of all actually is get some existing resources and put them in here, because most people have got PowerPoints, assessments they've made in Word or whatever it might be, sort of stored somewhere, and it's a good idea to put them onto here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with a sort of example assessment I made for these videos. So I'm going to go into New and then just go to File Upload, and then I'm going to find in here somewhere I've made an example assessment, and that's just on there now. Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and open this. And it's going to look like that. It kind of gives you a preview of it, and then we're going to open with Google Docs at the top. And you'll see it takes a moment or so. Now that is a relatively short, or this rather, is a relatively small document, so it didn't take very long. With larger PowerPoints it can take a little bit longer, but not too long at all really. Now what we're doing here is at the top we're editing a docx file, so that's a Word document essentially. So it can do that, it can edit that fine, there's no problem with that whatsoever. What it's worth doing here, I think at least, is just save these as Google Docs formats. Now what that's going to do is just make a copy of it, and so it looks exactly the same. It does a really nice job of turning that into a Google Docs version of that same thing. Now you might think there's no point in doing that, especially more recently that Google Drive can edit Microsoft Office documents a lot more effectively. But there's things later on down the line that I think actually warrant doing that. Now if we just close those off, and one of the great things actually about this, you don't need to worry about saving. Every change you make, everything you do is saved automatically as soon as you do it. So there's no harm in me just closing them off. But what you'll see is I've now got two copies of the same thing, and I'm going to use those later on down the line. One which is this W1, which is the docx version, so that's the Office version, and I've got a Google Drive version of it, a Google Docs version of that same thing. Okay, so I'd advise just uploading a few of your resources onto here and just try and convert them across. Okay, it will pay dividends later on, I promise.